All great fighters in history had this one unique characteristic inside of them. And when you try to put your finger on it, you don't know exactly how to map that thing out. But one thing's for sure, they all had it. When you think of the great fighters of old, like Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler, who would blow through your city and blow through your favorite fighter like it was nothing. And in the manner in which he did it, there was just something about him that you knew that the typical average human being doesn't have that characteristics. This is why people came to the arenas and he could fill a stadium. That trait that a fighter has isn't one of a regular average everyday person. And why is this trait so dominant in a fighter? Because see, this is almost like the animal Wolverine. It's a trait. It's not just in the DNA, but it's the characteristic that supersedes the human mind, the human body. They're typically, when you see them, they typically look like a machine. So did those guys like Jack Dempsey. And then came Sugar Ray Robinson, an offensive juggernaut. These characteristics of these individuals, they separated from the typical average human being by far. It wasn't close. That's why they are so captivating when you see them. And then as time continued to go on, there was the likes of Muhammad Ali, great blazing fighters who trailblazed. And when you watched them from the ground, you watched them from the sky. It did not matter how you looked at them. One thing you saw consistently is that unique trait. And that's exactly what we're going to get into when we talk about and break down the characteristics of this unique individual. Most people are not born with these genes, but lo and behold, we love to see them. And I'm going to make it very clear as we moved into the more modern era. For those of you who are at least 40 years old, you got to see the likes of Mike Tyson, the dynamo. When you saw him, you knew that there were not people that moved like that, were that explosive. And he, no matter what or who he was up against, he would fill an arena. And because that characteristic is something that we all see and that we all want to be a part of, we want to touch it, we want to see it. But what is it called? And that's what we're about to get into, because that trait continued to move forward through time. And then you got to see people who just had that flamboyance, like Sugar Ray Leonard. And here we go in this era. And we got fighters like Lomachenko, Tank Gervonta Davis. All of those guys have this unique quality. And I would even like to say Prince Nassim Hamed, who was electrifying. And there was this Hector Camacho, the macho man. He was totally flamboyant, but dynamic. And so this characteristic, as we break it down, thank you guys for taking the time to listen. But what we're going to do is really bring and shed light on this individual today. And so before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Coach Eric A. Bradley, coach that is. And for 4 decades, we teach boxing. And I was in the down line, or my up line, with several of the greatest coaches of all time. They're actually on the Mount Rushmore of coaching. They've literally written the book. So I had the honor of being in that downline and passing the knowledge that I've learned, being in a lot of different scenarios and having the opportunity to meet the world's greatest fighters ever, Hall of Famers. Literally got to work in the camps. So what did I take from all of these things, all of these moments in act, and all of these inspirations? Well, what I do is I take the knowledge that I learned and I write it, and I make sure that I cultivate it and put it into a science, because there is nothing more scintillating than the science of boxing. So today what we're going to do is break down this actual style of fighter. And this style of fighter, my friend, has the dynamics of a jaguar, but as venomous as a poisonous snake and as aggressive as a gorilla in the mist. And this fighter, the characteristic of them is what we call the hybrid. And what does hybrid stand for? It's a morph between two elements or things merged together that have different characteristics to make one unique entity. And when you look at that, you see the behavior, you see the tools that they have. And one of the analogies I'd use is a Tesla is when you take a minivan and you put it with a Apple computer, and this is 1990, and you merge those together and you have a Tesla now. The home van, and now you got the computer, and now you got this system of a vehicle. And when you look at these athletes, this is exactly what they are. They have those unique abilities. Now, when I break down the hybrid fighter, what does that entail? First, they are aggressive in nature, but when you think about them, they have the wherewithal to understand how to camouflage their aggression, how to manifest defense, to be in the position they need to be. So their footwork is absolutely off the chart. And when you understand this, the science of boxing, you understand how I always talk about the periodic table. It's just like when you look at the iron chart. It's all of these different elements that make up great footwork, understanding ring generalship, and the hybrid fighter has those all. And when the hybrid fighter moves, they understand that they're moving not to just get away from you, but to set themselves up, because their defense isn't just typical defense. They're just not trying to make you miss and make you pay. They are trying to make you miss and make you their prey. They want to finish you. And that's one of the characteristics of one. If you go back and you look at Sugar Ray Robinson and Sugar Shane Mosley, Sugar Ray Leonard, when those guys would come out for the final round, they were not coming out to just survive the rest of the fight and walk away with their hands raised. They were trying to bludgeon you. They wanted you to be finished. And so that's not something that you choose to do. That's within you. When you watch some of these young athletes that appear to have that, and then you see them run through a test and you say, oh, that thing's not there like I thought it was. Well, that's what we call algorithm of a fighter. It means it's not by choice, it's by design. They were born that way. And when you start to think about the hybrid fighter, that's exactly what's so unique about them. But what gives them the ability to actually move and can press? They understand head movement, they understand how to press forward and come utilizing the front foot just to set up the angle, because they understand something about moving forward. There's an immediate danger, but they invite that danger. And what's so unique about the hybrid fighter is when they create pressure, they already know instinctively. That's what's so unique. They are intuitively aware of what could possibly happen. So I say they were born with that immediate defensively responsible DNA trait. And so it's like they're in the wild and they're just like these animals who could come up upon their prey and never pay. And so when you watch a Lomachenko or a Tank Davis, you see them very rarely get into a situation where they're in real trouble. They've been hurt, they've been dazed, they've been possibly even dropped. But one thing about them is they smell blood still, because they understand how to act like a fighter. They have that algorithm of a fighter. And when they press you, they understand how to break, because they understand the periodic table of boxing. And there is a such thing. When you look at the floor, we created a map years ago, decades ago, sorry, that showed you about every possible footwork scenario, or when we call ring generalship, every scenario that can position you in a place in the ring that could either put you in harm's way, or it could put you in a position to set a trap for your opposition. And I think I like to think of myself as someone who paints pictures. And when I educate the athletes that were under my tutelage, and now the coaches that come up under my tutelage, I like to think of myself as giving them weapons that no one else possesses, because there's a maniacal drive when it comes down to the time put into it and the natural ability that I was blessed to share that with, and how I paint that canvas. It's very complex, but we make it so simple. So those guys being able to use the ring forward, laterally, backwards, and if we have to, we take it in a circular motion, not just left or right, but we'll spin you. And that's a hybrid. They don't know when to turn off the offense, but they know how to turn it on. If you caught that, it was a soliloquy. They don't know how to turn it off, but they definitely know how to turn it on. They don't know how to do it wrong, and they keep it on. And that, my friend, is what most fighters end up doing wrong when they impulsively try to do it, but they don't have the intuition. You remember at the beginning of this, I said they're intuitive. You know, when you try to chase down a squirrel or you try to attack an eagle, it's a very slim chance you're going to get him. It's just like trying to throw a cat off of a house. It's going to land on his feet. That's the same characteristics as a hybrid. Now, one of the other things that they possess is not only understanding how to press you forward like Mike Tyson did in the peekaboo, but a hybrid understands how to utilize it in a way that when we created the system that I saw Mike Tyson using in Custom Model, and we learned from the late, great Archie the Old Mongoose Moore, who's a part of my upline. I was brought into the family by the daughter, and the conversation that she had constantly with me, if she hadn't said it once, she said it 1 trillion times, is that I reminded her of the late great old mongoose Archie Moore, in everything, my mannerisms, my conversation, the way I approach boxing, the studious level, the education focus always on it, and never ending that level change, consistently rising above. And that's one of the most important things when you know you've embodied someone else and you have those same characteristics. So knowing how to, when I think of that, I saw that when I used to watch the Peekaboo, I said that style is fun looking, but one thing I never saw when it was used, even with Floyd Patterson, Jose Torres, or Mike Tyson, is there was a never set traps coming backwards. It was, or circling much. It was always hopping off to the side or right through you. So I understood that I needed to create more of a dynamic approach that burned less energy, preserved your oxygen levels, because I'm a stickler for the science of recovery inside of the ring and oxygen preservation, and knowing we fighting for the long haul if it has to go that way. But with the offensive a prowess that we approach the game with, we don't plan on keeping you around that long. So when that footwork and that understanding came into play after my mentors passed it down, I'm 3 generations, we're at generation 5 now. I took liberty to create a system that would help the footwork, that would help the peekaboo. So I reinvented it, basically mastered the art of energy preservation, creating angles, knowing how to utilize it going on your back foot and setting traps, so that we merged it. So when you're fighting forward, it's great creating angles, but now we do what we call a triplex with the footwork. We don't just have simple footwork or basic. We have footwork that no matter what you do, you have to follow the structure of the basics, but you finish a skill with fundamentals. And there's a triplex of movements that we do. And we have ordained that boxing ring, the periodic table, with the footwork series that we created, which was called Masterful Footwork Series. And once you understand the periodic table of boxing, you can do anything with anybody at any time. Because when it's said and done, understanding how to control a person in the ring and be in a comfortable zone, no matter where you are, whether your back's against the rope or you're in the corner or you're in the center of the ring, it does not matter. Understanding how to move laterally, back, forward, circle. We created an entire cycle of Muhammad Ali drills, and it's a total of a minimal of 8, and they all set you up. And so all of this came together, and that's what's so unique about a fighter like a Lomachenko. See, his father put him in dance school. And that's one of the things I understood about myself growing up. I was super light on my feet. I'm still light on my feet. Every fighter that I trained was light on their feet and super capable of dominating any foe. So we had some great battles. Our battles in the gym were like pay-per-view, especially when we would go into camps like working with top fighters all over the East Coast, up and down. We work with all of the great fighters. So special shouts out to many of you who watch out here in YouTube land, like Zab Judah, special shouts, Chris Algieri, you know, Hasim Rockman, guys like Klitschko, Manny Pacquiao, Rashad Holloway, Julius Vogel, just the list goes on and on. Chris Burr, special shouts. People who are part of the game. And my man, Andre Durrell on the show, that they are doing tremendous job with All the Smoke Fight with Andre Ward and Andre Berto. So those guys are lighting it up. Go check their channel out. It's fire. And when you understand boxing at this level, it's so beautiful. So once we had that peekaboo where we wanted it, we reinvented what we needed to do, and then we merged it with the Philly shell, because in the shell they're all 7 points of that defense. So that's an entire system of boxing by itself. So I was able to take that and merger it together, and now you got footwork, peekaboo, and the Philly shell. And all of those fighters understand how to posture in and out. It's not one style to the next. It's what we call postures to the next. So you understand how a fighter can look at you and say, damn, what is he doing now? Why can't I get him? And that's that hybrid. See, you fuse that world and understand that the system that we put behind that footwork alone could make you an absolute savage. Just imagine combining the old mongoose who had more knockouts than anybody, and Lomachenko, whose footwork was dynamic, and Muhammad Ali, that was sharper than a razor blade, straight off of the barber's leather strap. You can't touch it. And then the venomous power and explosive of a Mike Tyson. And that's what hybrid fighter is. And now you see guys like Gervonta Davis, who's encompassed all of those characteristics. The system resides right there in the book. Key is when you learn how to merge that together, you no longer can, you don't see yourself in a position where you can't get rid of a fighter. You don't see yourself that you cannot fill up an arena because you're dynamic. When you fight, people get knocked out, because knockouts aren't about power. Knockouts are understanding punch placement and punch cadence, and understanding how to create angles to hide the punch so that you can catch them with the Sunday punch when they don't see the punch coming. It's a combination of all of those things, and all you need to pull it off is reflexes, the understanding of having the proper algorithm of a fighter. and the wherewithal to follow the blueprint, and you'll be great inside of that ring. Because right now we need people who have action fighter written all over them. The ability to not get so caught up in how long or big a fighter is, but to blow right through and around them. And if he's too strong, you know how to pull him back and walk him into your power. All of those elements are relevant. And that'll position you to never be afraid to let your hands go again. That's what having that encyclopedia stamped inside of you, branded inside of you, and position you to have those same abilities. Like these guys had all great teachers. All of those teachers had decades in the game before they got them to that point. And so that's where, for me, I see those guys who are out there like yourself. You have the ability and opportunity to take your mind here, but it takes an algorithm, and that unique algorithm that it takes to say, I have what it takes to not get frozen in the ring, because I have the skill set to back my actual pedigree. And I also have the internal fortitude, like the Andre Wards of the world. You see, when you talk about hybrid fighter, you're not talking about a 1 through 7, 8 level guy, which is the best you'll see. I told you guys that there were 12 levels to this game, and Canelo was 9. When you talk about going to 10, that's when you start talking about hybrids. And that's what we created, the hybrid fighter system. And so when you understand there's a growth pattern, but you can't go in there faking like you're about that life. Now you can get away with it for a much longer time if you have the skills and sets that this thing possesses. But the bottom characteristics is algorithm of a fighter, that fortitude, that instinct of a killer, that ability to want the smoke at the most unopportune times, because you understand how to do it. You understand how to get away with it. And so today we bring to you Hybrid Fighter by Master Boxing LLC. And I'm your host and author, Eric A. Bradley, coach, that is, and we teach boxing. Continue to follow for more. That is the smoke that changes a fighter's life, fills up those arenas, eliminates the fear from his heart, gives him the confidence to know that he can pull this off, and makes him everything that he could ever dream of being, including a fight star. That's Hybrid Fighter. So put your name on the email list, and what we're going to do is we're going to have an actual in-service clinic live for 1 hour at the beginning of the month, and it's going to be absolutely fire. And we'd love to have you guys tune in and come hang out and see exactly what it is that this thing has in store for you. Make sure you subscribe, click the link down below. And I cannot wait to see you soon in the winner's circle. Welcome. Today is the inaugural announcement of Hybrid Fighter System.
I'm sure you've heard the news. There's a way to become unbeatable in the ring. Ready to find out how? If you're tired of getting hit and struggling to control your rage, it's time to level up. Master these 2 key aspects of the sweet science, and you'll become what we call a hybrid fighter. How do you master this? I'm going to give you something to do every day the exact same way. First, learn to protect yourself at all times. Cover your blind spots. Master when to use angles. Right now you're using them at the wrong times. You must do it when they don't know it's coming. Think Vasily Lomachenko. He's a hybrid. Next, learn to stay relaxed. This happens when you know how to cover your checkpoints and have 100% confidence that your blind spots are covered or out of range. Want to know when to create angles and master defending your blind spots? To become a hybrid version of yourself. Remember, a hybrid's not the perfect fighter, they're the perfect weapon. Ready to become unstoppable? Let's make it happen.